Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. We have an incredible quote channeling, actually a couple of them. These are dedicated to the topic of worry, delivered on September 10th, 1995 and June 6th, 1993. Worry is something that we all deal with. How do we address this thing that happens to all of us? What are the ways in which we can deal with it, and how does it affect our reality and our spiritual path? Quo is a group of higher density beings that are channeled through LL Research, who is an incredibly amazing group of individuals who have been channeling for 50 years, Ra, as well as Quo and other entities. These channelings speak of topics of a spiritual nature, and they resonate deeply with me. We begin with the channeling delivered on June 6, 1993. The question this afternoon has to do with the process of worry and prayer. It seems that when one worries over much about a situation, one is really sowing seeds for allowing that situation to take root and to sprout, to grow, to become more likely to be a reality. And the suggestion was made that a form of prayer might be the more helpful of the paths to choose in dealing with a situation that you are quite worried about. That talking out your worry to the Creator, to an angel, to a saint, to your higher self, to whomever, is much more helpful in creating the internal environment that not only gives you a peace of mind and a feeling of perspective, but sows the seeds of greater possibilities so that that which you are concerned about has more chance of turning out in a favorable fashion rather than in the way which you fear that it might turn out, in the way which you tend to worry about. And we would like Quo's comments on the concepts of worry and its effects upon a situation, and the concept of prayer and its effect upon a situation. Carla channeling. I am Quo. Greetings in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We are gratified to be with you this afternoon and to be that source called to your circle to comment upon your query concerning worry and prayer. As always, we request that personal discrimination be used as you listen to these thoughts, for we speak not as authorities, but as your brothers and sisters. In responding to your query, we begin by observing the estate of your species and your density. It has been written that man is a little lower than the angels. What separates the estate of third density from that angelic host is an illusion in which the truth is hidden, so that the generator of either positivity or negativity is chosen in faith alone, not because the circumstances of any situation are or become clear. The essence of third density is the striving for clarity in the midst of unremitting confusion and darkness. In this situation, it would be miraculous for any not to worry. There seems to be a continual stream of circumstance which cannot be controlled. Efforts to control are often useless. In the absence of action that is effective, the concern and returning to the concern is natural. Yet as your question posited, it is true that over-concern and worry cooperate with what may be called desire-driven destiny in such a way as to more nearly solidify the matter about which the worry and concern is expressed. We ask you to sit for a moment with the sheer inevitability of worrying circumstance. If you have come into this density and into this incarnational experience, fully aware and willing to undergo the dropping of the veil of forgetting, before your present physical vehicle was created, you chose this circumstance and this continuing line of circumstance. What about this was so valuable? The gem which you chose was the very veil of forgetting and the blindness of the choices you would be making within this density and this incarnation. It is to this present worrying moment that you have come, not by mistake or error, and not by chance, but step by step, you have moved hither in chosen blindness, and each issue before you now is faced in this blindness. What is the supreme value of this blind choice, but that it is blind? We emphasize this repeatedly because although it feels as though those of spiritual discretion and learning will have a greater and greater ease and pleasantness of incarnational experience, yet in terms of the matter which acts as catalyst, the reverse is true. The greater the activity of the seeker within incarnation, the more frequent the choices and the more heartily each choice is tested. So this situation which precipitates worry is the common coin of third density incarnation. and as such we recommend a quiet and contemplative consideration on each occasion in which worry arises of this fact. You did not come here to dispel worry and to be comforted. Rather, you came into the arena of third density to strive in darkness. Your greatest sight is the blind but loving heart. For one sees with the heart the light which is not visible to the mind, for within the heart rests the spirit of love. The spirit is a sight of wisdom which has no words in your density, and it expresses its wisdom in the more and more purified emotions. When the seeker comes first to the conscious study of the processes of spiritual choice-making, at first the heart is less than optimally pure in its expression. The seeker begins day by day and meditation by meditation to empty out of the heart the less pure of the heart's contents, as though the heart were a pocket in which many things had been placed, some of which were not desirable. After a time meditating and seeking, the heart begins to be released from having to hold so much of that which is less than pure, and then the heart may begin to shed its wisdom upon the conscious mind. This purifying process is not short, and we do not wish to suggest that you must become consciously pure in heart. We simply encourage each to do the work of opening in meditation regularly and allowing the heart to empty itself of the petty trivia so that its strain may be deeper and ever more pure. The path to the deep mind goes through what we call the heart. This is why we focus upon this word heart. We wish centrally to disengage the mind from the intellectualizing capacity of your brain, for although one may speak intellectually of spiritual truths, the truths are only true in and as a whole when they are felt, rather than intellectually understood. Now we have placed you in this situation and legalized worrying to an extent. Yes, you shall worry. You shall not break this habit entirely. Yet we have suggested that the truth of the situation is not best served by worrying. What then is the manner of moving in harmony with desire-driven destiny in such a way as to make the most effective and positive choices? We ask that you recall from one of your holy works that the one known as Peter saw the one known as Jesus walking upon the water. Peter, it is written, was excited to see this miracle and leapt out of the boat to walk to his teacher. But then Peter realized that he was doing the impossible, and immediately he stopped walking upon the waves and began to sink. However, the one known as Jesus reached his hand to Peter, and Peter was again able to walk upon the water with his teacher. This reaching of the hand to the infinite intelligence that is source and ending is an image showing the essence of prayer. It is a direct communication with that which surrounds and makes possible the illusion now experienced. To pray is to organize the energies within the self and point them directly at communication with and ultimately congruency with the great original thought of love. Thusly, prayer needs not be answered to be effective. It is not given that a seeker see clear answers to each and every prayer. Rather, it is given that communication and interaction with the infinite and the divine is not only possible, but inevitable. Prayer organizes this direct communication and identification in a polarized way. Worry makes the connection with the divine in an unorganized way. The very process of communicating with infinite intelligence causes the seeker to refine, reconsider, restate, and begin to see the truer dimensions of that situation about which he has been concerned. We do encourage more than prayer, however. The praying to be led is most helpful and efficacious. Yet there is also the great energy which dwells in this connection with infinity, which may then be released from intended communication as a reflex of this communication, as, if you will, an answer to prayer. To the open-hearted there comes that spirit which enlivens hope and faith, and in its turn this faith organizes the intellectual mind so that it is more worry-resistant when next the situation causing worry arises. The answer to prayer is not only the response of infinite intelligence to the matter for which intercession has been offered, but also a feedback which more and more informs the intelligence of that seeker who has prayed. Indeed, we would substitute for prayer the term conversation, for prayer is a word which in your culture has many negative connotations concerning the feelings of lack of faith, lack of confidence, lack of worth, and similar shadows. It also is connoted with the concept of the elite, as though some were more able to pray or had more right to pray than others. We would instead call prayer a conversation with infinite intelligence. In this conversation, the seeker speaks his mind as it is given him to do. Infinite intelligence responds in silence and in power. And free will being observed, destiny moves on, affected to some degree by this interaction. More than this, he who converses with infinity grows more and more full of this energy, which is the reflex of this conversation, the silent encouragement of the infinite for the seeker within illusion. We would suggest that as the seeker moves through the illusion day by day and repeatedly goes through the practice of worry, noting the worry, and of turning to communicate this concern in an organized way to infinite intelligence, there is the self-contradictory need both to release the free will to circumstance and to enter into that worrisome situation in imagination, to turn and face that about which the seeker is worried. Again, this turning and facing of catalyst does not bring about simply an answer to prayer, but rather it acts as a teaching aid, if you will, opening more and more the seeker's heart, enlarging the scope of the seeker's identity to itself, and bringing about more and more in the thinking patterns of the seeker an awareness of the self as a universal self. Much of what prayer and worry do is offer a definition or qualification of selfhood. Much of what seekers do in blind faith is seek and seek outwardly, reaching and reaching, yet learning more and more about the heart of the self, for the creation reflects that self, and those circumstances which are so obviously happening outside the self, within the illusion, are in fact reflecting part of the nature of the inner self. Behold your own visions and all sense impressions not only as outer events, but also as a grand system of mirrors reflecting your own inner nature. For all that seems outer, all that seems divergent, all that seems to have this and that quality in and of itself, is that within the illusion which is positioned in a way that shall teach the seeker of his inner nature. We join you in moving along this bewildering path. We encourage each in that cosmic conversation which shall reveal the seeker to itself and the self to the Infinite One. We would close this sitting through the one known as Jim. We are those of Quo, and leave this instrument in love and light. Jim channeling. I am Quo and greet each again in love and light. And this time it is our privilege to offer ourselves for the further query. If those present have additional queries, is there a query at this time? Carla, I have a question. Let me see. I don't exactly know how to frame it. First of all, I would very much like to know, did I get any part of what you were trying to give me? It was very difficult to go through some of these concepts, and if I didn't, could you re-say them, whatever I didn't get another way through Jim? I am Quo, and we are quite pleased that you were able to move through what was indeed difficult conceptual framework, shall we say. This is not material that is easily apprehended, and we are happy that you have applied yourself with such determination. I am Quo, and I am again with this instrument. Is there further query, my sister? Yes, I think I grasp what you're saying about how worry is good to the extent that we need it to alert ourselves to the fact that we need to pray, and that prayer is good, or communication with the divine is good. But there is a trigger in there where you are worrying about something and you hope that you somehow could get a trigger in there so that you move right on from worry to dealing with it in a prayerful and communicative way. And I think the original impetus for this question was, what trigger can I use to point out to myself the fact that I'm worrying and get me into a frame of mind in which I can do something about it? What keeps us from just worrying and worrying and worrying? What kind of trigger can we put in our consciousness that alerts us to this in ourselves? I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my sister. The threshold of worry, shall we say, varies from entity to entity. There are entities who feel comfortable only as they are able to worry about a situation. There are others who feel little distortion towards worry and allow whatever situation is occurring to continue with little concern for their part in the situation. Each entity must determine when worry has begun to wear out one's ability to find peace and equanimity concerning a given situation. There is the necessity, as we have previously mentioned, of giving enough concern and worry to a situation to alert the deeper self that there is the need for creative problem solving, shall we say. when an entity has thusly alerted not only the deeper levels of its own mind, reaching into that which is below conscious awareness, but has, through this same process, alerted those presences which serve as guides and teachers, then it is that these presences, along with the more whole self, must be allowed to present their comments, shall we say. When these resources have been heard, and whatever action that is possible has been taken, even if only to prepare for action, then it is that the entity must trust and have faith that all it can do and all that is appropriate to be done, it has done. By having this faith, the entity is affirming that all is indeed well, and has added that ingredient of faith into the mix of catalyst to serve as what you may call a kind of yeast that will affect the outcome, shall we say, in a manner which is most appropriate considering the various qualities, energies, and entities involved. Is there a further query, my sister? Just one. I sense we could study this topic further to good advantage. Would you confirm if that's true? I am Kuo, and we agree this is fertile ground for further consideration, for there is much of foundation attitude formation and its effect upon the external environment that reflects the nature of your illusion and the general field of what you may call magic. Is there a further query, my sister? No, thank you, Kuo. This has been an interesting session. I am Kuo, and again we thank you, my sister. Is there another query at this time? We then move to a channeling delivered on September 10th, 1995. We would like to know more about worry and fear in their relation to faith. Can one create faith, or must one wait for a gift of faith like grace? Does worry or fear ever help us by giving us the motivation to protect ourselves from injury? Carla channeling. We are those of Kuo. Greetings in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. May we say what a blessing it is to be with you at this time, to share our thoughts with you and to blend our vibrations with your own. That which you ask this day is a question of much substance, for in learning the lessons of love, the development of the faculty of faith plays a central role. The worry and fear which move through the awareness of those who seek is not so much that which is a mistake or error, as that which reacts rather than responds, and in developing the faculty called faith, the lesson learned of responding rather than reacting is key. You also ask if there are any positive aspects to worry, and we say that, of course, that which is loosely termed worry can be foolish and mean nothing, but it can also be wisdom or intuition which senses the need for concern. The entity who worries that the house has not been shut properly before leaving will turn off the light, will check the locks, will secure the dwelling in as many ways as is necessary. Worry gets the bad name because entities do not always focus upon the central question of whether there is in the concern any area or portion of that concern which lies within the purview or control of the one who is concerned. When there is no avenue open for action which can address a concern, the worry has no function within the physical illusion. Its function in the inner life then becomes that of moving the entity off center, removing the peace which lies within the one whose heart is clear and sets up catalyst. This function is useful. It is a way by which the mind focuses itself upon that point of inner distress. Over this inner universe, unlike the outer manifestation, the seeker does have resources to which he may turn. The question was asked during your study period. This instrument needs a moment to deepen the tuning, and we pause. This may be done. We are again with this instrument. The question that was asked earlier was, what is there to choose to do instead of worrying? And we suggest to you that worry is disorganized and random prayer. The deepest inner dialogue is with the great self that overarches and undergirds all that is. Worries and fears not only stew and seethe within the mind, they also register with the infinite one as cries of distress. However, the energy used in worrying is tangled and mazed, and the Creator, although reaching within always to comfort, simply cannot move through the tangle that has stopped the inner hearing, the inner vision, the inner sensing of that peaceful, creative, and wise self. Thusly, when the seeker sees itself in a muddle, worrying and fretting, we suggest that one resource that may aid is the memory, the remembrance of the fact that one who worries may also be one who prays and enters into conversations with the infinite Creator, that greater self of which each is an ineffable and unique portion. Now, each knows within the heart that worry, founded or unfounded, is only effective when there is an option open, something that can be adjusted or controlled. The one thing over which the seeker has constant control is the will, and it is the function of the will to aid in the establishment of a life in faith, for worry may be contractive to faith. So we come to the question of what can be done to increase faith. Now, the faith, when taken hold of by the seeker, creates an area of control in all situations within this or your illusion, indeed within any that we know of, how to lay hold upon that natural function, how to encourage it. We have often said that faith, when first chosen as a way of living, is nothing more than a leap into space. Faith creates itself in the midair, when the will of the seeker has been surrendered. That first so-called leap of faith is a beginning. It could be nothing more than the conscious decision, the promise to the self, I will live by faith. This is a good beginning. The will is invoked by such an affirmation. Each time the seeker subsequently finds itself mired in useless and cyclical worry, the affirmation may be repeated, I will live by faith. Sooner or later, there comes a moment when the repetition has bred a new and positive habit of mind, and in that moment the seeker finds that she has skipped the usual habit of worry and has been inspired spontaneously to affirm, I will live by faith. That moment of peace is as precious as your rare metals and should be stored carefully in a special part of the memory, that memory that lies just behind the surface of things. Now, the faculty called faith stems from an infinite sureness, a knowledge of self that rests deep within the roots of the mind. All that the seeker does when invoking faith is to reach towards the root of mind, where the faculty lies waiting to be encouraged to grow. Eventually, faith does become a habit, and during periods of the incarnation, when an entity is experiencing those things which are perceived as pleasant, she may rest and experience the peace which passes understanding. Yet there shall, in the natural cycle of light and dark, that is your illusion, be times when there is no comfort, there is no spontaneous feeling of faith, and when it is that, the wise seeker is content to live upon the bare memory of those winsome, glad times when the spirit is high and the faith flowed like water. These memories are true, and they are as the talisman that protects the entity suffering through change and transformation, even though no sense of faith remains. Faith is indeed a gift in that some entities have a clearer line or connection with their own unconscious mind. Faith is also a built-in, inherent, and native portion of the deep mind, and thusly it can be developed and pulled up into the conscious existence by one who works to form the habit of turning to faith, and faith's ability to give one the opportunity to create that area of control which changes the fear and fret of daily worry into an occasion to invoke faith. Once that feeling has been experienced of the support given by faith, then it becomes more and more natural to turn from the small circle of worry to the upreaching of prayer, intercession, praise, and thanksgiving. Those things which aid in connecting the faith deep within to the conscious mind include, first of all, the regular meditation. For in the silence of meditation, connections from within the deep mind are being made and information is flowing. Also, we suggest the encouragement within the self of praise and thanksgiving for all, large and small, or the ephemeral world that may meet the senses. Prayer, praise, and thanksgiving are three resources that add and strengthen the connection to faith. We feel that this is a good beginning upon this interesting subject and would ask at this time for any questions that you may have. Is there a query at this time? Question: this instrument has a new computer. Is there something that the instrument can do to make sure that the computer keeps working, or is there some effect she has on it that we should know about? We are those who quo. We feel that the instrument and the instrument are compatible. The energy which creates disturbance within the sound-producing equipment does not produce the same distortion within the computer. Indeed, the instrument has, shall we say, a beneficial effect upon the computer. Is there another query? Question: to be sure, then, the computer would not have any deleterious effect upon the instrument as far as using hands is concerned. We are those who quo. And if we grasp your query correctly, it is the instrument's choice to martyr the self in some degree that lies prior to any handling of any equipment that requires fine motor motion? May we respond further, my brother? To restate, might the computer emit any harmful energy fields for the instrument since she's so sensitive? We are those who quo, and we grasp your query now. We do not see a deleterious effect upon the instrument from the electromagnetic field of the computer. Question: I'm having a child, and I want to know how the development of this child affects the energy centers of the mother. We are those who quo. As a woman accepts within the physical body the new physical entity, she finds the energies within the self to be moving into harmony with the nascent and developing energies of the child within. This creates at first a dimming or lessening throughout the energy centers of the mother as the system adapts to and balances with the incoming entity's energies. Because of the fundamental nature of conception and gestation, the mother will often find the red or root ray energy becoming stronger. During this strengthening, it is easy to experience imbalance within that center because of the relative rapidity with which this process affects both child and mother. So the energies involved in living, breathing, eating, sleeping, those creature comforts, those natural sexual functions may seem to be very strong but confused or muddled. Likewise, the green ray energy center tends to run very hot, shall we say, for the natural faculties within the mother are opened as a flower to the sun by the process of nurturing and creating the life and all that great opportunity brings with it. The remaining energy centers have a tendency to dim and not particularly well balanced due to the immense amount of energy which is being devoted on the red ray and green ray levels by the mother. Therefore, it is helpful in attempting to balance the energy centers to use this visualization of that more balanced and even flow of energy. Visualizing this, even speaking of it aloud to the self in affirmative sentences, may do much to even out those energies and create more vitality and sense of comfort to the mother. May we answer you further. When do the energy centers of the child develop? The energy centers of the child are already developed. The energy centers of the physical vehicle are in an inchoate state until the entity decides to come into the physical vehicle. When that melding of spirit and flesh takes place, the physical body then takes on the basic energy balances of the entity, taking advantage of the incarnational opportunity. As the entity settles into the physical vehicle, the physical energy centers are invested with the entity's energies, which are as a complex of vibrations expressing the self and its personality. The resulting harmonies of spirit and physical vehicle create the energy centers in the configuration which the child begins the incarnation with. We may say also that the child whose mother consciously seeks cooperation and balance between her energies and the incoming spirit's energies creates the better atmosphere for the child to be in. The function of the thinking about or brooding about the child to come is that it creates a more and more comfortable pathway for the child as it is welcomed into physical existence. Question: you spoke of the melding of spirit and body, a certain time? The incoming spirit chooses its unique moment to enter. It may be the very early in the pregnancy. It may be almost identical to the moment of birth. Some life paths need to begin with the catalyst within the womb, and some therefore choose to dwell within that environment and experience suffering. Others may choose to come in early because there is a tremendous attraction between mother and child, and such a child experiences great communion and unconditional love during this time, so that an entity begins life perhaps already burdened with sorrow or with unreasoning optimism and joy. These are very individual choices, and there is not one selected moment for all, but rather each chooses for the self. Is there another query? Is there any sign or indication that the mother would know when the spirit begins to interact? I am Quo. Often there is indeed that moment of recognition, that moment when the mother knows the child within. The more tuned into the self and its true feelings the mother is, the more sensitive and vulnerable to such contact that person is. We would suggest that it will always have a beneficial effect to the child when the mother communicates with that entity, whether that is talking out loud to it or simply thinking to it. Such efforts at sharing and communicating are often rewarded. Further queries: would you be able to suggest any method of meditation for the mother that is helpful to the child? Thinking and talking are good. Should she refrain from certain activities that may be harmful to the child? Where there's a quote: to the entity coming into incarnation, the world is at first a disorienting place. It picks up and takes as its own any strong emotion or state, which is the mother's. If the mother's life is that which creates a deep unhappiness, this has a tremendous effect upon the child within. Similarly, the child will drink in joy and peace and love to the fullest extent, finding this gift as natural as the mother's blood which flows through its veins. As the physical fetus develops, the child begins to have independent feelings, but this is not marked until after birth. May we answer you further? No, thank you. My sister, we thank you also. We do find that the instrument is tiring, and so we would at this time leave our blessing our love, and our faith with you, and take leave of this instrument and this group. We leave you in the love and in the light of the one who is all. We are those of the principle known to you as Quo. Go forth with joy. Adonai. Adonai. And so we have two really amazing channelings that talk about an important topic that I probably need to talk about a little bit more on this channel. Worry is something that Quo tells us is going to happen. We will face worry in a seeming unknown environment. With the illusion there, we are always going to be worried. Now, there's a certain level of worry that can become creative. We create a universe based upon our worries. So, it's interesting that in both of these channelings, the concept of prayer is intermingled with the idea of worry. Understanding that prayer is a means of dealing with this worry. It's also an opportunity for you to commune with infinite intelligence. And I love the example they give of the story in the Bible where Jesus is walking on the water and he sees Peter, and Peter's like, oh, I can walk on water. And then he starts to realize, I shouldn't be able to walk on water, and sinks. And then he sees Jesus, and then suddenly he can walk on water again. And that's symbolic, because Jesus symbolizes infinite intelligence. And so when you start to communicate with infinite intelligence, all things are possible. You can walk on water. So you might be worried about something, but it's a time for you to commune, to ask questions, to go within, to meditate. It's also good to have an affirmation. They have one, I will live by faith, but other affirmations are very effective. I worry. It's something that I have tried to work on within myself because I am the son of a master worrier. My mother loved to worry. That was her favorite pastime. As is most mothers, I guess. Most mothers worry, but I could feel her worry. It was very strong and powerful. I think I was born in the womb, which is interesting because the end of these channelings, they're talking about being born and the effects of that. But I feel like I was born with this worry. So I've been dealing with this and addressing it my whole life. And I would love to know what you do with your worries, how you deal with it, what strategies that you have, how you commune with the Creator when it comes to worrying. Any suggestions that you have would be greatly appreciated. Some interesting conversation at the end of this channeling when they were asking about what happens in pregnancy and how that affects the energy centers. I didn't know any of that. It's very interesting to know that the soul chooses to enter into the body at different times. It can be at the moment of conception of birth. It can be other times. And it's interesting they make the comment that they choose to stay in the womb longer to experience the suffering. And they have repeatedly made this comment that we choose to come into this world to suffer. We choose the suffering. It is part of our lesson in this existence. Do we choose to be in this darkness, to overcome this and enter into a greater understanding of love and light and be of service to the Creator? I hope you're having a fantastically wonderful day. I'm thinking about you always and imagining wonderful, great things for you. And don't worry about a thing, because every little thing is going to be all right. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.